I have such a difficult decision to make in FPL this game week. Do I stick with the Norwegian goal scorer Erling Haaland, or do I move over to the Egyptian king himself, Mohamed Salah? Both players have their pros and cons, and I'm going to discuss them in today's video. So let's waste no time and have a look at how my squad could line up ahead of that game week 12 deadline. To start off the defensive section of this video, I think there's a big negative that needs to be addressed, and it is Trent Alexander-Arnold. And in my team personally, I think he is the #1 target that I'm looking to get rid of. And I'm going to explain my reasoning just now for you, because from what we found out today, Trent Alexander-Arnold hasn't been training with Liverpool. They do expect him back soon, however. Well, how soon can Trent become a real option again in FPL? Well, when we look at the fixture run for Liverpool here, it's really game week 14/15 where Trent could then probably be reintroduced back to the Liverpool side. And I believe it will probably be game week 14 we see Trent back playing for Liverpool. So game week 15 onwards is really the time where Trent could come back into people's squads and be a real option. The issue is he's 7 million in FPL. So, you know, for me personally, downgrading Trent to someone cheap in the defence, for example, we'll pull up my watch list here of players I am personally looking at in FPL right now. Lewis Hall for me is the obvious choice. You know, good long-term fixtures, attacking, shares some set pieces. Saving a lot of money, downgrading Trent to go for a Lewis Hall makes so much sense for a lot of FPL teams, and in particular makes a lot of sense in my FPL team. So for me, Trent is my #1 target to move on this game week because it frees up funds, and I don't really want Trent for at least 3 weeks now. So what else is a matter with my defence? What's the issues here? Well, Rico Lewis, again, we just are unsure whether he's going to be playing or not. We have had news today that Kovacic is going to be out for 3 weeks. So what I can expect, if Kyle Walker is fit, that Kyle Walker actually plays right back, and we probably see Rico Lewis playing in that pivot position, maybe alongside even John Stones, because John Stones is back in training, I do believe. Now, from an attacking point of view, because we really do pick Rico Lewis because his positioning is so attacking, in that pivot position, he kind of floats around and is a little bit more defensive. So yes, that is a negative, but you are going to be getting maybe a little bit more playing time from Rico Lewis if we do expect him to play that pivot position. I'm just a bit unsure whether that's going to be the case or not. So he then becomes an issue in my squad. But it is an option where I can just bench him for a few weeks and then just get rid of Trent. Trent out, Lewis Hall in is most likely my #1 transfer this game week. And then when we move to the other defenders here, if we sort of have a look at the fixtures, Fulham, for me, the fixtures aren't great. I have to be really honest. But as a rotational player, Robinson can come in for game week 12 for me. He can come in for game week 14 if I really need him to. And potentially, if I still have him by 17 and 19, I think he's a good option there as well. So, for me, Robinson is a rotational player. I don't mind keeping him, although I would like someone cheaper as a rotational asset in my side. When we look at Arsenal, obviously, I have Gabriel and David Raya. I think we all understand that the fixtures for Arsenal coming up are just really, really nice. And having double Arsenal defence, yes, it's a bit expensive, and yes, they've been underperforming recently, but really, coming into this title race, these are the types of fixtures that Arsenal would want to have. And it's really only United in 14, maybe just United in 14 that I don't like the look of. You can maybe argue Fulham away from home is a sort of tougher fixture as well. But across the board, the fixtures there for Arsenal are really nice, and I do like the look of them. So yeah, and maybe I mumbled a little bit in that section, but the real issue here for me in the defence is Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think I can work around and make things work in other areas, but yeah, for me, Trent has to go this week, and Lewis Hall is the likely replacement. If we have a look across the midfield line here, there aren't major issues really to deal with. Of course, we've got the yellow flags here. We've had some news about these players today. Everything does seem fine and ready for the weekend. I suppose Brennan Johnson is really the player that I would like to get rid of in my squad, but I'm sort of going to go along the line here and start with Mbeumo. And I think Mbeumo is a good option in FPL up until around game week 14. You could look to keep a hold of him, but I do think the fixtures turn for the worse, and it probably is my way to get Bukayo Saka if that is what I do around game week 14 and beyond. So we'll have to wait and see on that move, but I do think Mbeumo is a good option for the next few weeks in FPL. And Cole Palmer, look, I could talk about Cole Palmer all day. You know how good he is. The Chelsea fixtures are fantastic coming up. He's going to be a captaincy option, combating Salah and Haaland in the next few weeks as well, and potentially even this week with that Leicester away fixture. But yeah, Palmer, fantastic option. I don't think I'm going to get rid of him anytime soon. Brennan Johnson, I said, possibly an issue in my squad. He has a Fulham fixture and a Southampton fixture sort of in the next 6 weeks. Maybe that's a reason to keep him, but Fulham are okay as sort of a Premier League side at the moment. Not really, too many concerns with Fulham at the moment. So potentially Brennan Johnson could leave the side, but I'm not too sure who would take his place, because moving to Salah is a big issue in terms of money in the bank and defensive options. And I'll sort of talk about that later in the video, and it'll make more sense what I mean by that. But Semenyo, just right next to Brennan Johnson there. Long-term fixtures, pretty decent. I think he took the second most amount of shots in the Premier League, just behind Erling Haaland. So of course, that's good and positive news to hear. I just think the fixtures are pretty good, and Bournemouth do attack really nicely. So Semenyo, I think, is a good option in FPL right now. Similarly with Morgan Rogers here, we've had sort of doubts about whether we would play all of these minutes. He does keep playing these minutes for Aston Villa, and I think he will continue to do so. And with the fixtures coming up, I think he is a real good cheap option in FPL. I maybe wouldn't necessarily buy him, because I think it's more of a short-term to mid-term move, Morgan Rogers, not necessarily a long-term move, for example, Semenyo. But yeah, my midfield's looking pretty decent. Brennan Johnson is someone I'd like to move on, but I just simply don't know who to get in that spot, because Salah is a really tricky one to fit in there. Now, the forward pairing of Ollie Watkins and Erling Haaland. I'm going to start with Ollie Watkins here, because I think on paper, Ollie Watkins is a really fantastic option in FPL right now. There are two main points which are slightly disappointing about him. One of those being the price tag of 9 million. It is really, really expensive. There's some cheaper options in the game right now. Isak, Nicholas Jackson, João Pedro, who could combat Ollie Watkins with his great fixtures this week, because they individually have pretty good fixtures as well. And of course, Ollie Watkins' playing time hasn't been the best this season, especially last week, coming up really early. But of course, the international break has been resting players, getting back into training. Maybe we see more minutes from Ollie Watkins, and I really hope we do, because I really would like to own him, especially for that Southampton at home fixture coming up in the next few weeks. Erling Haaland, on the other hand, I have an opportunity with Erling Haaland to sell him possibly and move to Mohamed Salah. Why I'm a little bit more hesitant on this move to Salah now, look, we've had a lot more information. We know Trent is out, which means I will probably have to take a hit if I did want to go to Salah to get rid of Trent, to have a solid defence. So there's one reason to not go for Mohamed Salah for me. I would have to take a hit. What it would also mean is I'm getting rid of Erling Haaland. Haaland this week, in my opinion, has a really good fixture. Spurs don't have Romero, don't have Van de Ven. They're not going to be as defensively strong. They're still going to play that high line. We know Postecoglou is very stubborn with the way he plays, and he definitely will play that high line against City. City do have some interesting players coming back and are back in training. We know Stones, De Bruyne and Grealish are back in training. We don't necessarily know how close they are to be playing in the playing squad on the weekend, but it's some good news. And with Kovacic out, you can expect maybe Stones and Rico Lewis to step into those pivot positions. So, yeah, I really don't know where I stand. I don't know what direction I'm going to go, but I am slightly more leaning towards Haaland, simply because I'm not going to have to make as many transfers with my team in the next few weeks if I keep Erling Haaland. It allows me to keep players like Watkins and get some more depth onto my bench, because if I did go for Salah, it would be the case that Rico Lewis is my rotational player on the bench, and he will be my only rotational player on the bench, and we simply don't know if he's going to start or not. But with the Kovacic injury, it probably is quite likely he will start for City most weeks. Yeah, I could ramble on about this Haaland to Salah move all day. I'm going to quickly show you a Fantasy Football Hub sort of planning tool here, and the difference between me going for Haaland and me not going for Haaland this game week. So let's move on to that section now. Right, we're here on Fantasy Football Hub, and I'm going to kind of show you the next few weeks, one with keeping Haaland, one with selling Haaland. And the first draft with keeping Haaland would allow me not to take a hit this week. I really like the move to Lewis Hall. I think it's a sensible move. He shares set pieces, he's attacking defensively over the next few fixtures. I think he does have some great fixtures coming up. I think it's a sensible move. Of course, it takes some money away out of that Trent position as well, which I really do like. What it also allows me to do is strengthen my bench greatly. I can get someone like Pedro Porro, João Pedro, possibly even a week earlier than I planned to, thus missing out on the price rises, and it lets me keep a hold of Brennan Johnson, possibly for Fulham at home and maybe even Southampton away in 16. I haven't taken a hit here. I've got a strong team, good defence, good attack going into game week 12. I'm simply just missing out on Mohamed Salah. Can I build up the deficit away from Mohamed Salah this week? I suppose we'll wait and see on that. But when we look to game week 13, we have a really strong squad. What I would like to do in this week in particular is probably bench Rodgers this week, and what I could do also is make a defensive transfer, maybe away from the Jelkovic, who doesn't play at all, into someone like a Lewis Dunk or a Van Heck. Of course, great fixture for Brighton, especially this week, and again, I would have a really strong team going into game week 13. Game week 14 comes. Still, I haven't taken a single hit here. I'm making positive moves, bringing in players with good fixtures, and I have good bench coverage. For me, I could keep going on and plan, but I want to show you the comparison with having Salah now, because yes, Trent's going to have to go, and again, Lewis Hall is one of my favourite moves here. Brennan Johnson would have to go, Salah obviously coming in, and I would have to sell Haaland to build up that deficit there, to get Mohamed Salah in. So who would I bring in this case? Maybe an Isak, maybe a Nicholas Jackson. I'm going to go Isak for the sake of the video. So this is what the team would look like if I sold Erling Haaland. I have taken a -4 here. Game week 13, I would have to use my transfer to go into João Pedro, because I really like the look of him, especially this week. Granted, he may have gone up in price, but I do have money in the bank to afford that. Who would I bench in this case? Again, probably Rodgers. It does mean I have to play Robinson against Spurs away from home, which I don't particularly like. But, you've got a really good squad there. Moving into 14, I've got a free transfer. The bench isn't looking too great. I've got sort of issues at the back here with Lewis Hall and Robinson having to play. I haven't been able to make that Lewis Dunk transfer that I mentioned in the Haaland section. I'm just not too sure I like the look of the squad going into future weeks where I have to make that Salah move. Taking the -4 is a real big hit for me, because I'm not too sure that the deficit between Haaland and Salah in the next few weeks, especially with their difficult fixtures, is going to be as clear as people think. Yeah, it's such a difficult one. I'm going to have to think really long and hard tonight of whether I want to keep Haaland or move him on. I think I'm leaning slightly towards keeping him at the moment, just because I like the look and the depth of my squad going into the future weeks. But yeah, we'll wait and see. Of course, the deadline stream is tomorrow at 9 AM, so don't forget to tune into that. Of course, the deadline is tomorrow, and that means I will be live doing my deadline stream from 9 AM. So make sure you come along to tune in for that. But that is everything for today's video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.